learn about Mexico this week and improve your English, especially your listening skills. Welcome to this Mexican edition of
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching English between us, Reza and I are going to help you improve your English and take your grammar, your vocabulary and your pronunciation up to the next level. How are you, Reza?
I'm fine, Craig. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. We've had a bit of bad weather here in Valencia recently with some rain and floods, but everything now is back to normal. It's a beautiful sunny day and I'm happy to be podcasting with you.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it. Let's get cracking.
So what's first this week? First we have a message from Berta from a place you know fairly well, Alicante.
I know Alicante well, yeah.
Hi there, Reza and Craig. How are you doing? I'm Berta from Alicante. I'm a huge fan of your show. I find it very fresh and dynamic, and I like you a lot. I feel you guys very close, and it feels like I've known you for years now. I wanted to send you a message to thank you for all your time and effort. And I would also like to make a small suggestion, if that's okay with you. It would be great if you could do a recapitulation of all the terms and expressions you have used during the podcast at the end of the class. That would help me a lot to settle knowledge. Thank you again, guys, and I hope to hear from you a lot more. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your message, Berta. It was lovely to hear from you and a very clear message, wonderful pronunciation, so well done. Any comments, Reza?
Yes, Berta, thanks very much. I totally agree with Craig. Your pronunciation was fantastic, and thanks for being such a loyal fan.
You used the word recapitulation in your message, which I had to check because I wasn't sure whether that was a translation from Spanish, but it does actually exist in English, although we don't use it very much. We'd probably say summary, wouldn't we?
Well, I don't know. I think we do use the word quite a lot, but we use the short form. We say recap.
Oh, of course.
Recap is the short form of recapitulation.
It's recap, isn't it? Yeah, that's really common, recap.
But they actually hear the full version, recapitulation, is very unusual. We usually just say recap.
It confused me a little bit and I had to check, but it's an English word and we would say recap, absolutely. What about Berta's idea of a summary at the end? With this episode, it's not that easy, is it? Because we're not actually teaching a list of vocabulary or grammar.
Yeah, I think Craig's right. It's a very good idea, Berta, and we'll try to do it. But since this episode is about Mexico, but we're speaking in English, there won't actually be that much terminology that is new for you. So we might not be able to do much of a recap at the end of this one, but in certain lessons, yeah, it will be a very useful idea.
Another thing I'd say, Berta, is that when we teach, I'm sure you do this also, Reza, at the end of the lesson, especially if we've taught vocabulary or a grammar point, we will, at the end of the lesson, in a live classroom lesson, repeat the main parts of the lesson to reinforce and make sure the students have understood and remember what we've taught them. Although on a podcast, you can go back and listen again. If there's a piece of the podcast that you want to recap and go back and listen to, just rewind and go back to the beginning and listen as many times as necessary. Because it's recorded, you can always do that.
Next, we've got some written feedback. It's an email from Alejandro. Would you like to read it, Craig?
Yeah, sure. Alejandro says, "Hi, Craig and Reza. I just wanted to say hello and tell you that you are doing a great job. Thank you very much. Since I heard the first podcast, I've been learning a lot, and I would like to suggest you talk about Mexico for your next topic." What a good idea.
Very good idea. Mexico being a country where a lot of people listen to our podcast.
Before we start talking about Mexico, and thank you, Alejandro, for your idea, we'd like to mention our sponsors, italki. And if you're a new listener, you may not have heard that italki is a website that will help you find a teacher who you can study with on the internet. Now, some people don't have time to go to classes, or maybe they're too expensive, especially a private teacher could be too expensive. What you can do with italki is go to the website and find a teacher that you want to study with. So you can check by price, you can check by experience, you can check by qualifications that the teacher has. You can often watch a short video so you get an idea of how the teacher expresses themselves. You can choose accent, so would you prefer an American teacher or an English teacher or an Australian teacher? And are you studying for a particular exam or qualification? So you can customize the teacher depending on your language needs. Reza and I have both used italki. We do recommend the service. And if you would like more information, italki are offering a $10 discount voucher, $10 credits, when you sign up and pay for your first class with the service. So for more information, go to inglespodcast.com/298, which is this episode. Click on the italki link and that will take you to their webpage. And thank you very much, italki, for sponsoring this podcast.
Okay, Craig, shall we get down to the main business of this podcast? Mexico. What do we know about Mexico?
Well, basic facts, it's officially the United Mexican States, UMS. In Spanish, that will be Estados Unidos Mexicanos. And it's in the southern part of North America. Which countries does it share its borders with?
It shares borders, obviously, with the United States to the north, and also to the south and west, it's got the Pacific Ocean. To the southeast, you've got Guatemala, Belize, and the Caribbean Sea. And to the east, you've got the Gulf of Mexico. So the location of Mexico couldn't be better.
That's right. And although most people know, and I knew that the capital is Mexico City, I did not know until I did some research for this episode that it stopped being Mexico DF, the federal district, because I remember in the past seeing Mexico City DF, which is Distrito Federal. Although on the 29th of January 2016, they stopped doing that. And now the official name is Ciudad de Mexico.
I didn't know that till I researched a bit. I presumed in Spanish they still called it DF, but no, they don't.
How many people live in the capital?
Now, I didn't know the exact number till I looked, but I knew it was a lot of people. But to be precise, I saw various sources. The average I saw was about 21.6 million.
That's in the greater city area, the greater Mexico City area. I think in the center of the city, it's about 9 million. Huge. I think at one time it was the biggest city in the world. It's been overtaken by some others, but I think there was a time when it was the biggest. Yeah, I remember that statistic as well. Although it is still the biggest Spanish-speaking city in the world.
It's also the oldest capital city in the Americas. So it's not a new city, it's been around a long time. And the entire population of the country of Mexico is about 130 million. So that also makes the country the largest Spanish-speaking country in the world.
That's right. Have you ever been to Mexico?
I haven't. I'd love to go. It's a place I'm dying to go to for many reasons, not least the food, which I love.
Yeah, I know there's a famous in the UK, chef called Rick Stein, and he does programs traveling around the world, and he's done a very, very good program on Mexican food. It's in English, so if you want to practice your listening, go to Rick Stein. I think you can probably see some things on YouTube, but there's a whole series that Rick Stein did traveling around Mexico. It's really good. Have you seen it?
No, I've seen Rick Stein in India and a few other countries, and I really loved it. So I bet the Mexican series is good as well.
Oh, some wonderful food in that program. I really, really want to go and travel around Mexico one day. So what do we know about the history?
Well, I checked my dates because I knew the basic information, but I thought, let's give some exact details to our listeners. Mexico, as I'm sure all of you know, was a colony of Spain, and that was from the 1500s, and it was right up to specifically 1821. Before the arrival of the Spanish, there were lots of other tribes, Amerindian tribes, so American Indian. Here are some names, you might know some, you might not. The Olmec, the Toltec, the Aztec, you've probably heard of.
Yeah.
Maybe the Maya, you've heard of. Zapotec, Mixtec, and lots of others. And today, the indigenous population is said to be around 20% of the total.
In fact, I think I read that there was somewhere around 86 official languages in Mexico from these tribes.
Wow.
Yeah. It used to be much bigger, the actual country. In fact, land in the USA of 8 states used to be part of Mexico. But there was a war between Mexico and America between 1846 and 1848. And in that war, a lot of the land went to those states. So the USA took land from Mexico as a result of that war in the 1800s.
Yeah, I was really surprised when I was researching into just how much land of the USA had been Mexican. I knew some of it was probably, everybody knows, Texas and bits of California, New Mexico, Arizona, but it got right up to Wyoming. Part
Really?
of Wyoming used to be Mexico. It's incredible. It was really far up north.
Yeah.
So now I understand it when Mexicans insist, quite rightly, that Mexico is a North American country.
Yeah.
And I know that some Mexicans get very annoyed if you say, it's a Central American country. No, it's chiefly North American with maybe a bit in the center as well. And it's definitely not South American.
Because a lot of Westerners, when you say North America, they automatically think of the US and Canada. But they don't necessarily think of Mexico, which is obviously wrong.
So remember that if you got any doubt, Wyoming was part of Mexico.
Now, I've got a feeling, Reza, you can tell us some things about the flag.
Yes. Now, I already knew what it looked like, but I must admit I had to research into the why behind that.
Did you know the colours?
I knew the colors and I knew it had an emblem in the middle. So it's a tricolor. Some people say tricolor, 3 colors of equal size vertically. So green, white, and red in that order. So green on the left, white in the middle, green on the left, white in the middle, and red on the right. Those colors pay homage to the National Liberation Army, apparently.
What does pay homage to mean?
It's to remember them because that was the colors of that organization which fought for Mexican independence and against territorial losses with the United States. So that's the colors. And the emblem in the middle is quite similar to an official emblem of their neighbors in the US. It's an eagle. There's an eagle. Because according to Aztec legend, their people had to find an eagle which had landed on a cactus, eating a snake, and there they should build their capital city.
So in the middle of the flag, there's an eagle eating a snake.
On a cactus.
On a cactus.
That's what the emblem is.
Okay.
That's right. And that spot happened to be on an island in the middle of the lake. Yeah. Scientists are fairly sure that is true. In the middle of what is now Mexico, there used to be a lake and there was an island on that lake. Mexico City used to be all water, or mostly water. It was like swampland.
In fact, I read that it's sinking now. It's sinking into the lake. So it goes down every year because of the water.
It's kind of built on water, the whole city. Amazing.
Yeah.
And the Aztecs called their capital city, let me check the pronunciation, Tenochtitlan. Sorry, I probably said it very bad. So Tenochtitlan was the original capital of the Aztecs, and now that's become Mexico City. Even in the time of the Aztecs, it was a big city. It was an important city even then. Mm-hmm. So that emblem in the middle of the flag depicts this Aztec legend.
Now, Mexico's made up of 31 states. That phrasal verb, made up of, means composed of. So there are 31 states. It's made up of 31 states. Now, one of those states is Yucatan. And when the Spaniards arrived, they asked what the place was called, and the local people answered Yucatan in the local language. Yucatan means, I don't understand you. But these Spaniards who came over from Europe, the Spaniards thought they replied with the name of the place. Another Mexican state is Chihuahua in the north. And Chihuahua is on the border with Texas in the north of the country and also New Mexico. And although what I read told me that the history of the Chihuahua dog is shrouded in mystery. If something is shrouded in mystery, it's covered in mystery. It's not clear. It's very mysterious. Many historians think that these dogs originally came from Mexico, which reminds me a little bit of the episode we did on the Canary Islands with the dog and maybe the seals and that kind of history of something that's not very clear. But apparently the Chihuahua dog is named after Chihuahua territory in North Mexico.
Now, the Aztecs, just one of the several tribes who once lived in Mexico in great numbers, they were very intelligent, very cultured, very advanced people, but they did something which wasn't exactly very PC, politically correct. These days they might get into a bit of trouble for it. They killed 1% of the population every year to please the gods. They killed people.
Human sacrifices.
Human sacrifice. One in every 100. Goodbye, adios, bad luck. We got to keep the gods happy.
I wonder how they chose the people.
If anybody knows, could you let us know? Are there any Mexicans listening who know the answer to that?
I wonder if it was like a reverse lottery where they gave everyone a number, and then if your number came up, that was it, you know.
And was it for the person who was going to be sacrificed a good thing, or maybe a bad thing? Might have been a good thing. Maybe it's like, oh, you're lucky. You're going to help the gods. You lucky fellow.
It was for the Vikings. The Vikings were proud to be sacrificed to the gods.
Wow.
It was a mark of honor. It was something you should be proud of, to give your life to the gods.
Tell me, any Mexicans listening, would you be happy to be sacrificed these days for the gods? Give it your opinion.
There's a huge pyramid in Puebla, in a place called Cholula, in the Puebla region. And it's the world's largest pyramid by volume. It's 4 times bigger at the base of the pyramid than the famous Giza pyramid in Egypt. And it has twice the volume. So it's huge, it's massive. Actually, it's the largest monument that's ever been created anywhere by man, according to the Guinness Book of Records. Although it's not actually as high as the one at Giza, it is absolutely huge. I think it's 4.5 million cubic meters. And I saw a picture of it on the internet. There's a church on top, and it's just this huge big hill that's been built and grass has grown around it. It looks really, really impressive. So if we eventually go to Mexico, that's one thing we should definitely go and see.
For sure. Now, earlier we were talking about how much we love Mexican food, but Craig discovered something which I just couldn't believe, that Caesar salad was invented in Mexico. I would never have associated that with Mexico.
That's interesting, eh?
Wow. For you, what is a Caesar salad? What are the ingredients?
It's actually romaine lettuce, which is a particular kind of lettuce, and there's croutons.
What are they?
Croutons, I think, is toasted bread, isn't it? Is it bread that's been toasted and it's quite hard and it's cubed, which means it's cut up into a cube shape.
So they're nice and crunchy.
Exactly. It gives the salad a nice crunch, so there's texture in there. And there's lemon juice or lime juice, olive oil, and egg, and Worcester sauce. And also, what I didn't know, anchovies and garlic and Dijon mustard, Parmesan cheese, and black pepper.
Mexico, Caesar was a Roman, right? Why is it called Caesar salad?
Because it's named for someone called Caesar Cardini, who was an Italian immigrant, and he was working in Tijuana because in 1924 there was the prohibition law in the US, so you could not drink alcohol in the US. So this guy Caesar Cardini, he came down to Tijuana to work in a hotel and restaurants and work with food, and he invented the salad down there.
I would never in a million years have guessed Caesar salad came from Mexico.
Me neither.
One thing I did know was that chocolate has a big connection with Mexico. In fact, hot chocolate for drinking was considered a sacred, like a special religious, a sacred drink among the Aztecs.
Yep.
They took it very seriously.
They did. And I did know that Hernan Cortés, the Spanish conquistador and explorer, he brought back hot chocolate that he found in Mexico to the Spanish court back in 1568. I knew that. But I did not know that Christopher Columbus had brought cocoa beans to Europe earlier in 1502. So the ability to make chocolate or hot chocolate existed with Columbus, but it wasn't actually accepted among the Spanish gentry and the Spanish noblemen and noblewomen until Hernan Cortés obviously saw it in Mexico with the Aztecs and brought it back in 1568.
Another fact about Mexico and food and drink is that it's the world's largest beer exporter. That really surprised me.
It surprised me as well.
Wow.
I had no idea.
4.5 billion, that's with a B, 4.5 billion American dollars, or 28.5% of total beer exports in the world are from Mexico. Mm-hmm. To give you an idea of just how much that is, the second biggest exporters are the Dutch. So from Holland, they export $2 billion. So Mexico is more than double the nearest competitor.
One of my favorite beers in the world is Dos Equis, and I used to drink that when I was working in New York many years ago, and I did not know it was from Mexico. Have you heard of any Mexican beers?
Yeah. I like Dos Equis as well.
You've heard of it, yeah?
But you don't see it much here. In Europe, you see Corona and Sol a lot more, or one, I think it's called Molino, is it? Molino or Molinero?
I've definitely heard of Corona and Sol. One of them, you put lime in the top.
Yeah, that's a tradition, yeah. Although, to be honest, don't be offended, Mexican listeners, but I don't like that. I don't like lime in my beer.
Me neither.
I just prefer it from the bottle without the lime.
But I've noticed they put lime in the top of the very light coloured lager beer, but Dos Equis is a darker, maltier beer, so they wouldn't put lime in a Dos Equis, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, people from Mexico, but you generally put lime in beers that are lighter and lagers, and the darker beers you wouldn't.
I've just thought of another one I've had, Pacifico. There's a Mexican beer called Pacifico or Pacifico.
Oh, I haven't tried that. Is it nice?
Bad. Yeah. There's only a few places you can get it in that I know of in Spain, but a few. Corona Sol are by far the most popular. And Desperados?
Yes,
that's another one.
Desperados. And that sometimes has lime in it, I think.
Let's not forget those other really important drinks with alcohol from Mexico. Tequila. Who hasn't heard of that?
Yeah.
Tequila. But not so well known. You've got mezcal.
I've never had mezcal. What is it? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I'd be interested to know if any listener could get back to us. How do you make mezcal? We're not exactly sure. I think I've drunk it once or twice and I quite liked it, but it's not the sort of thing I would drink a lot of. It was pretty strong.
Yeah, stronger than tequila?
Something similar. Tequila is pretty strong as well.
I like tequila, yeah.
Have you ever drunk slammers? Tequila slammers?
Yeah.
Can you describe how to drink a tequila slammer?
If I remember, you have some lime in your hand and you have some salt on the back of your hand or the side of your hand. And with the other hand, you have the shot of tequila. So first you take some salt on your tongue, then you drink the shot of tequila and then immediately bite the lime. So you've got the combination of the acidity of the lime, the salt, and then the taste of tequila. But tequila's really nice. If it's a good tequila, it's really nice just to sip it, just to drink it as a short by itself.
Yeah, I know there are many types. I'm not an expert, But I also know that there are many types of mezcal and they all taste slightly different. And I'm sure our Mexican listeners know about all the different varieties.
And I think there's tequila with a worm in the bottle. Have you heard that?
I've heard of that, yeah.
And the treat is to eat the worm. That's the honor. The worm at the bottom of the bottle.
Would you do that?
The bottom of the bottle. Sorry?
Would you do that? Would you eat the worm?
I'd have to have a few glasses of tequila first, I think. I don't think I'd do it sober, but yeah, why not? If the mood is there, have some worm, yeah.
To maybe help the worm go down, a bit of mariachi music might help in the background.
How would you describe mariachi music? I know you're a fan.
Well, I wouldn't call myself a super fan. I like Latin American music in general. I'm not an expert, but I know that mariachi ensembles, that's a way of saying musical group, they started back in Jalisco state, or mariachi groups as we know them today, way back in the 19th century. And they're still popular today. So, as you know, you normally get a guitar, trumpet, violin singers, and sometimes harps as well. And of course, you've got to have the big hats, the big sombreros. You can say in English, sombrero, by the way, is a word. When we say sombrero in English, we mean specifically a Mexican hat.
Yeah.
Not just any hat, it's a Mexican hat, is a sombrero. And people still listen to mariachi performers today for important events like birthdays, saint days, or lovers who are courting, getting to know each other. The mariachis play in the background.
It's very lively, happy, upbeat music. If it's upbeat, it makes you feel good. It's kind of the opposite of blues, isn't it? It's very, very happy, very positive music.
Everything's good, the tequila's going down, you're in love, it's your birthday, it's your saint, it's for good things.
You're eating the worm, life is good. Mariachi music. There is an example we're going to put in the show notes. To see the show notes from this episode, go to inglespodcast.com/298 and listen to some mariachi music. Now it's your turn to practice your English. We would love to hear from you. So where are you from? Is there a country we haven't spoken about yet that you would like us to? We enjoyed doing the research for this episode on Mexico. But if you would like us to speak about your country, please let us know. Reza, how can people contact us?
Our preferred way is to hear your voice. And that way you get to practice. So why not send us a voice message to speakpipe.com/Inglespodcast.
Or you could contact us by email with a comment or question. So send your emails to craig@inglespodcast.com, or you could also write to Reza at belfastreza@gmail.com. And those email addresses and the link to the SpeakPipe are also in the show notes.
You might also be interested in visiting the online store where you can find various things which will help you with your English. Have a look at store.mansioningles.net.
Before we say goodbye, we'd like to thank you for supporting this podcast on Patreon. And you can see a list of all our wonderful supporters over at patreon.com/Inglespodcast. Thank you very much for helping us pay for the show notes and getting those to you. We'd like to welcome our new supporters who have joined us this month. And we finally have the real identity of Mr. Norman Foster. Do you remember we thought he was an architect?
Yes, the world-famous architect.
He did laugh about that, and he sent me an email saying, no, I'm not the famous architect Norman Foster, although he is an architect. It's Julian Gomez. So thanks, Julian, for joining the Patreon program. One comment Julian did make that I'd like to pass on to you is that he slows down the audio to understand more, and also suggests that maybe we can speak more slowly. So we'll try to do that. But most audio players do have the function of slowing down to 0.5 speed, so you can make us sound like we are drinking tequila and speaking very like this. You can slow us down if we're speaking too quickly for you. Reza, anybody else joined our Patreon program?
Yes, as well as Julian Gomez, Norman Foster, we'd also like to thank our recent Patreon sponsors, who are Joseba Jimenez, Federico Mancinelli, Maria Garcia, Mario Garfias, Carlos Gallego, and Diego Rich. Thanks to all our Patreon sponsors. They are just our most recent. Go to Patreon if you want to see the complete list of sponsors.
We've also had a request to say somebody's name in a giddy accent. So the request comes from Enrique Gonzalo.
Enrique Gonzalo.
Enrique Gonzalo.
Oh, that's a nice
Hello,
name.
hello, Mr. Gonzalo.
Enrique or Kiki Gonzalo.
I think Enrique Kiki is from the Canary Islands, so hello to you. And we have spoken about the Canary Islands. Enrique, you can go back to inglespodcast.com/282. If you would like to join our Patreon program, you can for as little as $1 per month, and you get instant access to recent transcriptions. So also if you're having difficulties understanding every word, you can see the words written if you join our program at patreon.com/inglespodcast. What's next week, Reza?
Next week's episode is Spanish food from a British perspective.
Hearing what we think about Spanish food. That will be an interesting one. Please join us for next week's episode. Thank you for listening this week. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
The music in this week's podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later. Also from Kevin MacLeod. Del Rio Bravo by Kevin MacLeod, licensed Creative Commons by creativecommons.org.